So yes, the other day after the Ring of Honor pay-per-view, Tony Khan, the leader of AEW, said this, and it sent everybody crazy.
To be AEW is to be under constant attack. You do a great show, and the next day somebody's saying something negative. You do 5 great shows in a row. Somebody says something negative. You break the ticket record for the most tickets ever sold for any wrestling show in the history of the world, and somebody has something bad to say about it.
Now, as always, the worst thing about social media is that every single thing has to be black and white. Therefore, if I do a tweet or an X saying I like blackberries, somebody will respond saying, oh, you don't like blueberries, do you? That's when I kind of look off into space and I'm like, the human race is totally damned. Where are the aliens? Because yes, if you want to break it right down, the big thing people love to talk about right now is, well, Tony Khan said some things about WWE in the past. And I'm like, yes, WWE also said some things about AEW in the past, right? Sometimes you just have to take quotes as they are said in the context that they are meant. And sometimes I don't think we should be saying things about anybody else. Sometimes I find it quite funny, right? It depends on the situation. And once again, it depends on how I'm feeling that day, because I'm a human being and these emotions can change. But as this video has been titled, Are We Too Negative About AEW? I would say that when it comes to wrestling in general, because I do think you have to look at it as an entire landscape, the answer would be yes. On the one hand, it's perfectly fine to be negative about professional wrestling. If that is what you enjoy to do, and that's how you get your entertainment, I don't think anybody should be able to tell you otherwise. I think the issue is, when you do get people that are coming at it from a detrimental point of view, or whatever the correct word would be, it always goes the same way. For some reason, and again, I'm kind of blanket assuming here, which I probably shouldn't do, but I just want to make my point. When somebody is negative over and over and over again, eventually they kind of find that line, and they start feeling that line, and they start massaging that line, and they go over that line, and for some reason, it becomes calculated attacks on those who are running the company. So it's not just, oh, I don't like AEW, and it's not even just, I don't appreciate or like the way that Tony Khan books his company, which again, you're perfectly allowed to think. It becomes, oh my God, he's the worst thing ever, and he's detrimental to the wrestling industry, and oh my gosh, he's going to kill AEW, getting the fact that without Tony Khan, there wouldn't be an All Elite Wrestling to begin with. I think the best thing that I saw on the internet, you'll have to forgive me, I can't remember who saw it, it's just when I was doom scrolling, as we all want to do, somebody was like, you know, he's a billionaire, and he could just be on a yacht like having all the billionaire fun, but instead he built a wrestling company. Now again, if you used to like AEW, you don't like it anymore, that doesn't mean that you're not allowed to be upset. Of course you can be upset, and of course you can be a sand panda, and of course you can be a little bit disappointed. But when you start pointing the finger of blame at people and being super duper aggressive and super duper insulting in many cases, then you've already lost the argument, and that's the issue. This kind of ties into all the videos I've been doing on my channel recently. The idea of intelligent discourse in professional wrestling is fading away, and I think that absolutely sucks, because what we should be doing is, I really like AEW at the moment. I think the Continental Classic is amazing, and I love the fact that it's bookended with the devil stuff. Now, obviously, the reveal has to be good, otherwise it'll be like Vince McMahon in 1999. It was me, Austin. It was me all along, although that's one of the greatest parodies ever these days, so you never know what the future is going to bring. There is a wonderful balance when I watch AEW, and personally, I don't think it feels like WWE. Again, you're allowed to disagree with me. That's what a lot of people are saying, like, oh, it just feels like WWE too, and they've done the same thing. TNA did, which seems to be a horrible shot to TNA, because for a few years there, TNA were doing a pretty good job. But if all of a sudden they start doing things that I don't like, I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And even if the 2 hours of Dynamite or the 2 hours of Collision or the 1 hour Rampage, even if I sat through all of those 5 hours after, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks, and I thought to myself, this isn't really being built to my tastes anymore, I think I'd probably just stop watching. And again, some people don't want to do that and they want to try and get into the nitty gritty, but I don't really think that's what people do anymore, right? It all just becomes doom and gloom. Like I say, it becomes black and white, it becomes this and that, and there's no nuance. And I think there has to be nuance when it comes to pro wrestling, because I think we said this on another video. Without the birth of AEW, I don't think WWE is as hot as it is right now. I think it lit a fire under their ass. And the way that AEW, I feel, has come back at the end of 2023 and headed into 2024, I don't think happens unless, you know, throughout this year, WWE's been really good. So when there was some blurring of the lines on the other side, Tony Khan probably sat down and said, right, what do I want to turn this into? And that's when the Continental Classic was born. And when AEW first started in 2019, it was this idea of it's a real sport, we're going to do sports presentation, and they have moved away from that. But when you have a round-robin tournament where people are winning 3 points and 2 points, and no one's got a draw yet, so no one's had a 1-pointer, and that moves you on to the semi-finals and the quarterfinals and the finals, that's just sports, man. That's the Premier League. In fact, it's based on the Premier League, because of course Tony Khan owns Fulham Football Club. Who'd they lose to the other day? I can't remember, but it doesn't matter. But they got no points, right? And the opposition got 3 points. To me, you get the stories that naturally come out of it. Like, we're now getting matches on Collision where it's like, well, this guy has to win, otherwise he's out. On the other side, you have like John Moxley. Oh my gosh, he's so far ahead. Can anybody catch him? So if you want to break it down, down, if you are a Premier League fan, football fan, soccer fan, but my American friends, I would say that John Moxley is Manchester City. That doesn't work at all, but I'm going with it. Eddie Kingston would be Leicester from 2015. This is such a niche, but no one knows what I'm talking about. Who else is doing well? Andrade would be like Liverpool, and then we need someone like Arsenal. Who would? I'm an Arsenal fan. You can go nuts in the comments and subscribe when you're there too. Who the hell would be, Claudio Castagnoli? Just because he's a fan, that doesn't even work, but I've done it now and I can't take it back. But the fact that we are sort of weaving these things in now, I think is really important. And just going back to Tony Khan's quote quickly, he's allowed to be upset that people don't like his company. I'm a big fan of putting myself in other people's shoes. Now look, he who cast the first stone, throw the stone at someone's head. That's not the saying at all, but the saying is, if you've never done anything wrong in your life, then sure, go after somebody else. But the point is, we are human beings and we have all made mistakes. So just because Tony Khan may have said something in the past that you didn't necessarily agree with, or you kind of think like the chickens have come home to roost here, he is still allowed in December 2023 to put on what he deems to be a really good wrestling show and then see whoever it may be tearing it apart and going, well, that's a little bit disappointing. And also, going a little bit off piece, you'll have to forgive me. That is just what we do as people. I know that I do it. I can get 99 tweets saying, Simon, you're great. Simon, we love your videos. Simon, your bald head is the most wonderful thing I've ever seen. And someone says something really cruel, and that's all I think about all day. Not that I want to do that, and I've become far better at it. In fact, my skin is quite thick these days, because again, I have gone through that kind of stuff. But that's what we do. So if he does go to bed feeling all buzzed and feeling all excited, and he wakes up and he actually sees more positive than negative. If there is a lot of negative, it always feels more than the positive. It's the vocal minority that will always get you, because again, they're the loudest of the lot of them. And I think if he wants to go out in a press conference and say, I don't necessarily think he said it was getting him down, but from his body language and his emotions, that's the kind of vibe that I got from him. And given that there were years when people were like, oh man, we'd love it if, well, Vince McMahon specifically, just because they did have a monopoly for 20 years, we'd love to see the more personable side of him. I find it somewhat hypocritical. Now, we do have a new owner who is super transparent and super honest. And once again, I'm not saying you have to agree with everything he says, but I love the fact he does give you honest answers most of the time. He doesn't want to talk about something, he'll just shut it down completely, which he's also allowed to do. But we've now got the 180, and I think that's fantastic. So I don't want that to go away. It's a bit like, I'll tie it back into sports again. When you see a football manager get interviewed, they literally just go, oh, we just focus on this game and the team effort, even though this guy played really, really well. This is a pointless interview. It means nothing. I like it when the players pop up and they're like, man, I had a terrible game. Well, I didn't like that guy. That sucked. A little bit of personality here and there. And in the world of professional wrestling, I understand that he's seen as the owner, the CEO, whatever you want to call him. So he does have to walk that tightrope a little bit, but I would always like that, because I think that's kind of how a lot of people still see AEW. WWE is the big conglomerate, whereas AEW is the little train that could, even though it's pretty damn big these days. I don't know. I saw everybody talking about it, and you're allowed to be negative and you're allowed to be positive, but sometimes I really do think we're getting down in the mire with this stuff. And it does feel like we're just throwing shots, because ultimately it's just professional wrestling. If it went away tomorrow, a lot of us wouldn't know what to do with ourselves, and we'd all be super duper sad, but the world would keep on turning. A lot of people don't like me for the way that I do this, but if I don't enjoy a segment, I have the wherewithal to go, well, okay, that just wasn't for me, that segment. Maybe it's for John, maybe it's for Jennifer, maybe it's for Steve, maybe it's for Sarah, maybe they loved it, and that's great. Do not forget, even if you watch the worst segment that's ever been written in professional wrestling, if you like it and you get something from it, then you've won, because we only have so many entertainment dollars that we're able to spend, and you spent it on something and you were entertained. Whereas if I didn't like something, well, I've just pooped the bed. So it sucks to be me. I think that's my main point here, is it would be great if you could talk to somebody and just say, I didn't like this, and they would tell you why they did like it, and you kind of meet in the middle a little bit. But it's not like that. There's a lot of insulting, and there's a lot of personal attacks on the professional wrestlers themselves and the promoters and the people backstage. If you want to rip apart somebody's character, have to it, man. But I do think sometimes we need to remember these are human beings. I mean, it kind of ties into the Kenny Omega stuff, right? Everybody didn't like that Kenny Omega segment, and with Chris Jericho and Big Bill and Ricky Stark. And even I said, when I reviewed it, it didn't really click the way that I'm showing they were hoping it to. Then it turns out that Kenny Omega is dealing with diverticulitis, which apparently, if he hadn't made it to the local medical facility on time, I'm not saying it could have killed him, but it sounds like we could have started headed in that direction. So I always like to remember that the human beings are more important than some silly storyline I see on television. Again, there's 52 weeks of wrestling TV in a year. It can't all be for you. It just can't. And I understand, once again, if the overall personality and the overall feeling of a company has veered away from what you wanted it to be, sure, you can be upset, sure, you can be disappointed, and sure, you can be a little bit down. I don't think we need to start the mudslinging. And look, it's a waste of time, this video, because you're going to do the mudslinging anyway. I like having these conversations, and I do enjoy seeing what people put in the comments, mostly. Some people say, oh, Simon, you're such an AEW shill. Then if I'm having a bad day, I respond saying, oh, well, SmackDown the other day get no downs, and I win that argument. Not gonna lie, I smash that fool. I break him in two. Because I am an overly positive wrestling fan. Well, it was twofold, really. One, I just thought there was too much negativity in the wrestling space. Again, that was my opinion. And two, when I started watching wrestling like that, I was like, holy crap, man, this is so much more fun. And it almost felt like I was watching wrestling when I was a child again. I don't think you can beat watching wrestling when you're a child. Everyone's favorite era is going to be the era they started watching, just because you're learning all this stuff and you don't really understand the magic trick. And then very sadly, we're just living in a time where it will get ruined for you. But even then, there's elements that we want to come back to. So I would say it's the same with WWE as well. It's only because Tony Khan came out and said this. But no, I just think overall people are too negative about professional wrestling. And I believe more in the power of building people up than tearing them down, right? Punch up, don't kick down. Good way to live your life. And it's a good way to approach things that you enjoy in your life as well. And again, I'm preaching to you now. You don't have to listen to me. You can completely ignore me. Just interact with the video, and that will be fine. Also, just quickly as well, if you're into fitness and supplements, make sure you go to grillofmine.com/Simon. Use Simon, get 10% off. We've got merchandise, pro wrestling, tees, and Samson Athletics. You know what to do. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to the video on the screen. Again, just check out the description and click as much as you can and go in those comments. Maybe you think I'm an idiot. This was meant to be more of a chilled video, so I hope it came across that way on a Sunday night. But it's YouTube. You may be watching this on the January the 8th, 2029, and something awful has happened in wrestling, and you don't realize when this video came out, so I get it then too. But that's okay. I like it when people come at me. It sounds a bit weird, but you know what I'm saying here. As long as you care, and as long as I get a reaction, John Cena was right.